Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. So the City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all its Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritage, their relationships to the land. And now we'll have a moment of reflection or prayer. Thank you, and welcome everyone to our June the 4th, 2024 meeting. This will be my last meeting as Deputy Mayor. Effective June 3rd, Councillor Robbins will be Deputy Mayor and chairing our council meetings, and Councillor Sharps will be our acting mayor for a period of June the 3rd to July 18th. June the 4th. I knew that. Today's the 3rd. I'd like to welcome everyone and take this opportunity to remind you that those who act disrespectfully or disrupt the proceedings through their words or actions may be expelled from the meeting. Please do not applaud, speak out, act disrespectfully, display intimidating behavior, or disrupt the meeting in any manner. Should disruptions occur, a recess will be called while security asks those demonstrating disrespect to leave. So thank you for that. So we'll get into the adoption of the, So before the adoption of the agenda, I want to know if there's any agenda additions. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda? Oh, we have to adopt the previous minutes. My apologies. So I need a motion to adopt the minutes of May the 21st, 2024 regular City Council meetings as presented.
I'll make that.
Councillor Sharp, second.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Hirsch. Thank you. So any additions to tonight's agenda? What? Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I want to get to these additions. So we'll vote on the adoption. Thank you. So that's unanimous. Thank you. How do you vote?
So I just note that I'm not on the list. I don't see that anyone else has their votes. Yeah, there was a couple of us missing there. Oh. I'll turn
Okay,
off
perhaps we.
there.
Okay, there we go. So we'll vote. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Finally got that behind us. So at present agenda, I'm going to ask if there's any additional agenda items. Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. I have a notice of motion for the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any others? Councillor Dumanowski.
Through the chair, I ask that we add to the agenda the appointment of a new police commission member.
Okay, thank you. So the council will adopt the agenda as amended. And we'll start with councillor announcements. Are there any councillor announcements? Councillor Robbins?
I actually have two councillor announcements. So first of all, I wanted to say happy Seniors Week to all of the seniors in Medicine Hat and area, and I encourage them to participate in the events that are planned for this week. We discussed them a little bit at Public Services Committee, so I thought it would be a good idea to bring it up here and say how much we appreciate all of the contributions they make and continue to make. A lot of volunteers in our community are from the seniors community, and we really value them, so I just wanted to make sure to highlight their special week. So if you know a senior, call them up, take them for coffee or lunch or supper, ice cream, whatever you like, and tell them how much they mean to you. That would be a great way to celebrate Seniors Week if you're not a senior yourself. And I also want to notice that June is Pride Month, so again, wonderful opportunity if you have a member of the LGBTQ+ community in your life and you want to let them know how much you care about them and celebrate with lots of different activities happening this month, then please feel free to do so. And I just wanted to make sure I highlighted their importance to our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no other councillor announcements, we'll move to the consent agenda. It's quite lengthy. I'm just asking if there's anyone who'd like to pull items from the consent agenda for discussion. Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
I will move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
And a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. And we'll vote. And that is unanimous. So now we're going to move on to delegations. So I just asked the city manager, our first item is 9.1. Just moving ahead, which is Destination Marketing Organization 2023 Annual Report Presentation, and the sponsor is Public Works, Acting City Manager. Would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair, very pleased to introduce to council somebody you well know, Mr. Jay Sanderson, Executive Director of our Destination Marketing Organization. As part of their agreement with the City of Medicine Hat, there's an obligation for them to provide an annual report, and Mr. Anderson is here to run through a presentation for council highlighting the successes of the DMO in 2023.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, leaders, neighbors, and friends. It is, on behalf of our volunteer board of directors and I, an absolute pleasure to spend a few moments with you this evening describing a little bit of the experience and the success that we've had in celebrating the community that we all know and love. And as is now my form, I'm just going to test my own. Oh, thank you so much to the tech for guiding me through and helping me to not look foolish, except when I do it naturally myself. 8 slides, 7 pages of notes, at least 1 coffee already today and 1 more to come when we're done. I've got about 6 minutes, I'm told, and a whole lot of passion for the community we call home, and so let's go. Slide number 2. At Tourism Medicine Hat, we acknowledge that Southern Alberta is situated on traditional lands, and that we are here right now, we benefit from these lands. We will strive to continually learn, and in doing so, we recognize that we'll make mistakes. We commit to owning those mistakes, taking responsibility, and learning from them. That is an element and a brief take from the latest land acknowledgement that we have shared in page 2.3 of our Experience Medicine Hat Guide. It exists on the main page and every subsequent page of our Tourism Medicine Hat website. And it is, and there will be a recurring theme perhaps throughout my 6 minutes if I can keep it under 7. There is a recurring theme of continuous improvement, and that is an example of that. It's not something that we've done and put on the shelf, but it's something that we continue to learn and grow by. See, 2 slides, 1 page. That was easy, wasn't it? The DMO is a simple not-for-profit society, as you all know, with an industry-led volunteer board of directors. Our mission is to be an industry-led nonprofit that exists to strengthen Medicine Hat's tourism profile through destination work. And our vision is to be that trusted leader and trusted partner in working in our community to promote and celebrate Medicine Hat's tourism experience. We have brand pillars, a number of them. Some of this is really for me to reframe. It's nothing new, it's in the document, and you've heard it from me before, but it sets the table for a sort of sense of guiding lights and lenses that apply to the work that we do. We have as a community 2 brand pillars that we focus on and recognize in our work, and it's through deep research and work that came before us 10 years ago. It is consistent and exists today, and it is vetted year after year. The first brand pillar is that outdoor experience that we know and recognize as a resident, and it continues to fuel our fire on the team at Tourism Medicine Hat when our visitors see and celebrate that upon visitation. The second brand pillar, that second lens, is that emerging sense of culture and creativity. And without diving into that and trying to define it for you, I'll let that linger in all of your minds for all of the reasons why Medicine Hat is this growing and maturing sense of culture and creativity that excites all of us. We have 4 tourism nodes that provide context of lens through how we do a fair bit of the work that we do. One is that historic downtown Medicine Hat. The other is the historic Clay District and Medelta, IXL, Highcraft Potteries, and all of that space in between. Cypress Hills, Elkwater, and Hidden Valley, as well as the 4th Echodale Regional Park. Travel Alberta alignment through the work that we've done over the last number of years has been very important. Alignment and collaboration and a close working relationship. The Tourism Destination Zone, or TDZ, space that we've been working in with them, focused from Medicine Hat to Lethbridge along Highway 3, has been helping us to identify and to underline some of the really consistent thematic values that we have across Southern Alberta that when we work in alignment and collaboration allow us to lift the entire region, which by default gives us an opportunity for voice and attention further afield. The further we get from Southern Alberta, the more work we have to invest and the broader we apply our lens to the area so that we can successfully grab the attention of those potential visitors or the reattention of visitors who we're looking to re-entice to return. In their recent Travel Alberta tourism strategy, there are 5 elements that I want to list very briefly, and the reason I list them is we see ourselves in a number of them: leadership and alignment, competitive product, people, access, and Indigenous tourism. And that's very exciting for us because those are elements that are at work throughout the province, and there are elements in those spaces that we've been working on right here in Medicine Hat and Southeast Alberta. 2 significant events that we saw hosted in 2023. One is the Jehovah's Witness Assembly in June last year, 2 weekends, and it was a remarkable experience for our community and our partners for a number of reasons, not the least of which is we have a facility that can host a group of that size. We've not, as a community in my time, seen a group of that size attend meetings, not a sporting event, but meetings, and look to return, and that's incredibly valuable. The second event that we saw hosted last year that really resonated for us was and forgive me, I'm going to read from my note because it's a whole bunch of words, the Canadian Enduro Downhill Mountain Biking Competition. So the competition was held in Elkwater during Canada Day weekend last year. It was the first time it was held here, and it was arguably an opportunity for us to put Southeast Alberta on a very specific niche communities map because that Canadian Enduro Challenge is hosted in mountain bike centric communities all across Western Canada, whether that's Golden or Fernie or Whistler and others. And so to know that we had the trails and the ridership and the community that could earn that sort of attention last year was really rewarding for us, and we saw it play out as it was rewarding for several hundred competitors from as far away as Manitoba, well into BC, and they took advantage of that outdoor experience that we offer, that we profile, and we'll talk about a little bit more in the next 2 minutes because we're falling behind. That's me falling behind, not you. A couple of key business outcomes, and I'd love the opportunity to have all evening or all afternoon with you at some point to talk through every page one at a time, but perhaps tonight is not that time. In 2022, our calendar events, our online calendar events, saw 289 events listed. So we were proud of that. That's 289 events over 12 months that were celebrated in the community of Medicine Hat. They mattered to Hatters, and then by default and authenticity, they would matter to specific niche visiting groups. And so when we saw the increase from 289 in 2022 to 498 events on our calendar in 2023, we were ecstatic. And then to know that that visitation on those calendar events pages saw a 90% increase in online traffic. Meant not only does the calendar exist, but it's growing, and not growing simply because we're adding to it, but the community is adding to it, because there are almost 500 events in the community, and I don't know all of them until somebody tells me what they are. But then the traffic on that page, or those collection of pages, excuse me, increased 90%. That's a validation of the sort of work that is underway there. The other one, really quickly, was the Experience Medicine Hat Guide. It's the 104-page, full-color editorial magazine that we produce every year. Last year's online readership increased 2.4 times. So the volume of people who are clicking the link, finding that, and then spending time in it increased 2.4 times. Validating and very encouraging. The third one quickly was that our Visitor Information Center saw an 11% increase in traffic over the year prior, which is exciting for us because it is in those moments, recognizing that we don't always see in that building people who are coming to Medicine Hat as their final destination. We absolutely are practiced, and we get opportunity to give compelling invitations to those travelers to linger in the community that we know and love. And when they linger, the potential for them to stay, have more of an economic footprint in our community, and potentially spend the night, which unlocks all kinds of opportunities in extending their stay. Firstly, for the first-timers, and secondly, to invite people back either on their return trip. If they're on a Mecca somewhere else, that's okay. We know people are heading to the Rockies. They're heading to Alaska. They're heading to the West Coast. But we see them because of our fortunate location on the Trans-Canada, and that matters with that visitor center. Pride of place and place marketing. One of the things that we continue to do over the last year or two is increase our effort with our Medicine Hat summer campaign, particularly with focusing on in the industry, we define it as shoulder seasons. It's outside of that July-August focus of our core summer. And frankly, it's one of the benefits of living in Medicine Hat, Southeast Alberta. We have summer for so much more time on the front and back ends. It's one of the reasons why mountain biking, as an example, has lift in Southeast Alberta, because the mountain bikers that we know who live closer to perhaps more extreme riding environments, whether it's Canmore, Golden, or otherwise, they don't always get the riding opportunities as early in the season or as late that we can deliver here. That matters. Same thing applies for golf, pickleball, and the list will go on. Food and beverage, it turns out when people travel, they do love to eat and drink. And Medicine Hat is a delicious destination. And we're given more and more opportunity over the last couple of years to continue to celebrate, to lift that, and to ensure that folks further afield have a sense of what to expect. And what they're going to expect are the things that you and I get on a regular basis. What should we eat? What should we drink? We have real benefits here that we can celebrate with that. We were fortunate in hosting CTV Calgary last year for the first time in the package that we did. It was a part of a multi-day morning show in Calgary. And one of the reasons why I note it here, it's in the voluminous pages we submitted, but our tourism team were emphatic at the time that we not take what was offered and perhaps seen by our team as the easy out. We made the work, we made the investment, destination and tourism at Calgary, they were going to do the work they offered to do it by Zoom. And lots of communities did. You save some real money not having to pay for that rubber tire visitation. And so you jump on Zoom in the box and you celebrate the community you're in. And no disrespect whatsoever, but our team said, if we're gonna celebrate Medicine Hat and Southeast Alberta in the Calgary market, and perhaps in front of people who've not seen or thought about us in the last 6 or 8 weeks or more, let's make sure the interviews are happening right in the foyer at Medelta. Let's make sure that when they're down getting B-roll, they're down getting B-roll in our community. That matters. And it's little things like that that stack up. Differentiators for us as a destination include 165 kilometers of trail with 3 distinct mountain biking and riding and walking biomes. It is our town site, our city site, Elkwater, in that mountain region. It's all of those different spaces, and the beauty of it is that you can access all 3 of those experiences with a 45-minute drive, which means you can do multiple things over the course of one weekend. It's 330 days of sunshine. Yeah, it's all kinds of things. Let's move on. See, right? Let you fill in the blanks. I'm not being lazy. It's very calculated. For several years, we've included this circle concept in our report to the city. The wheel graphic is developed recently by Destination International, but it's based on a quote by an industry mentor of mine, Maura Gast. And if you're looking at the elements, you might start to recognize some of the words that we've included in our reporting in previous years. It starts with a visit. And we have and offer big life in a small city. And so whether it's tourismmedicinehat.com, whether it's the work we're doing going outside of market and presenting in Calgary or in Regina or wherever else we are going and carrying Medicine Hat's flag and banner, or whether it's movetoMedicineHat.ca when folks are beginning to contemplate where they might look to put roots down if they're open to a change. And the traffic on that website suggests that we're getting significant hits from Winnipeg and Vancouver and Edmonton and Calgary and Medicine Hat, because occasionally locals, myself included, like to be reminded of why they love the place they call home. And that's one of the things that we have the opportunity to do. Economic development for the residents benefit the visitor, and economic activity of the visitor benefits the residents, particularly when it's steeped in authenticity, which is a 2-hour conversation in and of itself. The visitor economy brings new dollars into our economy. And this is where I think it's really important that I underline work that you have underway right now, and that is the Facilities for the Future conversation. And that is recognizing that that investment is incredibly important for the community that we are all a part of. But it also has real implications to that visitor demand and that visitor economy that we have the opportunity to leverage and grow in. And so a very brief example, if you'll allow me a bit of storytelling. This weekend, I drove out to Echodale. I drove out and absolutely loved the winding road where you drive down over the waterways, and there must have been 30 kayaks in the water. It was incredible. I was very excited. It's colorful, it's vibrant. It's a very evident, obvious use of this public space that your investment has made possible. And I drove past that and past the families, and I went out to the back to the campsite space. And I had a reason to go out there, but what I saw was the 670 Mountain Biking Club hosting their very first Badlands Bash. And it was a downhill mountain biking competition that they threw together. I'll say that because they'll punch me in the arm the next time they see me, because these things take a lot of work, don't they? But they threw this Badlands Bash together as a way to celebrate early season riding in another biome. They already host an August event, but this is a June event right here in Echodale. It's an activation. There were more than 90 riders. We saw riders from Montana and a family of riders that came up from Texas. And they said they're traveling with their bikes, and that was the first stop in Canada, and they drove this way for it. It's anecdotal. But those sorts of activations, I want to drop on the table for you to linger and think about when you're thinking about the Facilities for the Future investments. Because when there's crossover and alignment for the things that matter the most to our residents, they absolutely matter to the visitors that we're going out and looking for. And they're matter to the visitors that maybe we don't go out and find, but they find us. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not spending any of our money in Texas. But this family shows up and rides. And I guarantee the next time they drive through Western Canada, will be on their agenda because the riding's good. This comes from mountain bikers, not me. I don't do that thing that they do. I have multiple other pages and I have a whole bunch of notes. I'm not getting side-eye from anybody because I don't think I've bored one of you yet. But the picture tells its own story, doesn't it? You know we have a sunshine trolley. You know that we are passionate about this community, and this community with this much sunshine, with this many parks and green spaces, with this river valley and this beautiful historic downtown and historic Clay District, it ought to have a destination-like way to see it, and the sunshine trolley does that. So in 2023, we added a second. We got a little bit newer. It's a diesel, and it has a lift for mobility challenged, which mattered to us and has gotten a fantastic use case already all the time. So we had 58 classrooms of local and regional children take rides on the trolley during our school program last spring. And then we had multiple loops every day throughout the summer, 4 or 6 days a week, and our overall ridership. So you think about that, 22 and 28 or 24 and 32 seats. At 95% ridership, it means we're running on average with 1 or 2 empty seats at most. That's exciting. So we've got 2, we're going to do more in 2024, but this conversation's about last year, so that is the last slide. That right there it's my last slide. It's my quote. It's not my quote, but it's my cue. I'm done. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Your presentations are always entertaining. Maybe a little over time, but they're also entertaining. Does anybody here have any questions of Mr. Anderson? We have okay, so Councillor Van Dyke is first.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was quick on the button. Thank you, Jace, for coming. I always appreciate your enthusiastic presentations. I just wanted to make mention of the Experienced Medicine Hat Guide. I appreciate that you still print hard copies of it, and that's because I go to the visitor center and I pick up the swag bags, sometimes the ones that are left out, the kind of generic ones, but sometimes I come in and kind of custom build them for the people I have coming to visit the city. And it's really nice to be able to give them such a high quality and high value booklet that showcases businesses and public amenities in our city. I always look when I visit other places in the province to see what kind of similar product they have, and it is never as good as ours. So I appreciate the work that your team does, and I read your report. It was very informative. It's amazing to see the growth in many areas, so thank you.
Councillor Dubanowski.
Yeah, through the chair, Jace, Mr. Anderson, thank you for coming again today. You are certainly an orator amongst many. You bring passion to your role and to this community, and I love how you bring the stories to life. That is really at the crutch of what you do, and that is, you know, because we're just this mid-sized city, but what makes us unique, what makes us special, and the fact that you can do that in a visual way. Your pictures are beyond extraordinary. Someone else probably took them, but I'll give you the credit. But the storytelling in the form of your annual review here is incredible. I love how it also ties into council's strategic priorities and how you see yourself as a direct tie-in to how the city functions. When we're successful, you're successful, and vice versa. Question I always ask you, you probably know it by now, but I always imagine if, and not necessarily tied to monetary component, but if sky were the limit and you had additional dollars or additional opportunities that came with dollars, and by the way, you do a great way of leveraging that, but what opportunities, and it might not be tied to monetary, but what opportunities do you see on the horizon or around the corner as far as Tourism Medicine Hat and the people and the council before you?
Thank you, through the chair, for the opportunity. One of the things we talk about a little bit internally is what will it look like in 5 years? Why will we in 3 to 5 years give one another a high five? What is it that we've done or been a part of or seen happen in our community that will invigorate us in that way? And one that you've likely heard from me in the past, but will hear again, is more room inventory, hotel room, boutique, stay opportunities, whether it's more in our downtown core or other parts of the Southeast Alberta region. I think the traveler right now, and all of the data is telling us from an international and national and provincial perspective, that a number of travelers right now are looking for something other than a hotel. They want something else, whether that is an open sky viewing bubble or a tent along the river, not a tent they have to put up themselves, but one that's already been set up and one that has reasonable walking access to some bathrooms or some showers. Those sorts of things really matter. And so whether you define it as glamping or otherwise, those things are on our minds on a regular basis. And we're advocating to the provincial government and Travel Alberta about why it matters to us because they're telling us it matters to them in the provincial context. And then we talk about the things that are most important to us as a community, and it's the opportunity to see them elevate because that's a part of the sort of sense of authenticity that we're rooted in. So Medelta and IXL and Highcroft. Couple of dollars, couple of moments of real intentionality, couple of moments leveraged of community members who are passionate leaders, and some really remarkable and fundamental visitor-centric things could happen that would bring people from further afield. The River Valley, and this might be my opportunity to talk about a paddle wheeler on the river moored right downtown. I've brought it up in a couple of meetings. I'm not sure I get invited back to those meetings or those rooms, but these are exciting things, not just because they paint a beautiful picture, but because there are proven use cases for the resident and for the visitor when they exist. And so activation along the river, we have a beautiful river valley that is nestled in our historic downtown. There's some exciting things that could happen there. That doesn't all happen if I stumble over a bucket of money, because the DMO, the tourism entity, doesn't just do those things. But we are absolutely invested in encouraging and leveraging and seeking out others who might, and support and assistance and leadership from the city, facilities, opportunities, collaboration and alignment, the sorts of things that we're seeing. We're not in our first year anymore, we're in our 10th. But those sorts of things matter, and that's a consistent growth. It's a Kaizen, it's continuous improvement of everyone by everything all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, and through the chair, Jace, thank you for your presentation. I just had 3 things. First, I want to tell you, I was at the announcement for the Jehovah's Witness again for this year, and it was so neat to talk to them. So they were, I just went up to them and said, well, tell me why you're back. Like, what was it? And they said, are you kidding? Co-op Place was awesome. The staff here was awesome. The restaurants were amazing, and the people didn't care that we were here for a religious reason. I thought that was kind of interesting. They just were so kind and so nice, and the food was great, and downtown was nice, and it was really nice comments. So that was the first thing. I have a question here. It's going to be my last point. Second, next week or later this week, I'm leaving for, as few of us are, to Federation of Canadian Municipalities. But in March, when I was at RMA, which is rural municipalities, I was about to have lunch, and somebody stopped me and said, where are you from? And I flipped open my tag and I said Medicine Hat. And he goes, you got Jace. It was such a nice thing and then he went on about how you were so amazing at what you do. And I said, how did you meet him? And they're just like, he does tourism, man. So it was just a really big compliment that I think you should know. So then out of your presentation, I only have one question. You said that there's been an 11% increase in site traffic. Is that to the visitor center specifically? Okay. And how does that compare to pre-COVID? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would be happy to go back and parse those numbers. Pre-COVID and up to 2018, I believe we were also managing the Visitor Information Center in Walsh. And so some of those numbers we were able to present in a way that talked about the Southeast Alberta visitor experience. 20 years ago, 10 years ago when we started, the volume at that building might have been a little bit higher. During COVID, it was down substantially, obviously. But knowing that we're on the climb, of that 11,000, 9,400, give or take, were counseled at the counter. And so that means they're not stopping in to use the facilities and leave. They're not stopping in to grab something off the counter but not get talked to, because so much of that information's available elsewhere. What they're doing is they're coming in because a Visitor Information Center is still a trusted resource, and they're not seeing or perceiving us as somebody with a vested sort of benefit, an extrinsic benefit to selling them one hotel or one restaurant over another. And so that's why almost 10,000 people stopped in and said, hey, if I'm going to be in town for a couple of hours, what should I do? And we give them enough reason to spend the night.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, thanks, Jace. Obviously, always appreciate you and your team's passion every year when you come and do your annual review. It's always been fantastic, and I'm remiss. In fact, what's driving in my head all the time is that work of a destination organization. When you visit, if you build a place where people want to visit, then you got a place where people want to live. If you build a place where people want to live, then you build a people where they want to work, et cetera, et cetera. And I do resonate on that lots, if you can imagine. And my piece on that is that I start feeling like tourism becomes a bit of a link or a gray area to economic development. And I guess the question I have for you, and of course, with tourism becomes economic development, which equals growth in our community and the diversity it can offer and all the great things that we have in our community. And then I merge that into the realities that we have in our day in terms of working from home. And I guess my question becomes, in what ways, or maybe you haven't, have you considered or strategized on the work from home phenomenon and the ability to maybe attract new residents to Medicine Hat in that way? So is it a tag team effort between our economic development group and yourself, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. One of the things that we talk about often is that we believe from a strategic perspective, our DMO Tourism Medicine Hat works at the intersection of visitation tourism and economic developments in that space. And so we're very fortunate to work in alignment in a number of different aspects with the Economic Development Department of the City of Medicine Hat. We have a really strong, long-standing relationship with economic development practitioners, both regionally and city-wise, but from a provincial perspective and a federal perspective. And so the Move to Medicine Hat example, I think, dovetails into something like that. One of the things we have done as we have had dollars to put on the table is take some of those strategic messages that research would suggest matter to those work-from-home communities, whether they're looking for a new place to plant roots or just a place to work from for 2 to 6 months. And we understand that both of those things exist. And so we've taken some of our messaging and some of our dollars and spent them further afield, because we're not often spending money in Ottawa. But we understand that with the defense industry and with a number of the hiring opportunities that exist here and the industries that exist in our community, we already have a bit of a tension that we can leverage with some of our spends there. And we're getting out in front of that with Vancouver as well, both from a relocation perspective and a simple brand quality of place. So the placemaking, why Medicine Hat matters to folks in Medicine Hat. And it's like upon like. If what we're doing is resounding and consistent with who we are as a community, then folks who are drawn to that find it much easier to see themselves in it, to see themselves in the imagery and in the editorial, and then to say, you know what, that's a spot for me. Now, it all starts with a visit, whether it's a weekend or a drive-through, but ultimately what we're looking for is new neighbors.
And just a follow-up comment. And so, again, I don't think your efforts or your team efforts should be just in isolation. I've always been a proponent that we've got, and I don't know what the latest census is, but I think we've got 68,000 residents that could be considered salesmen for the City of Medicine Hat. Yeah. When you're out and about in many communities that you serve and say, how's things in Medicine Hat? You've got a choice to make. We either celebrate that we live in a fantastic city or we don't. And I think that's up to us to determine our future in regards to that. So thank you very much. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McGrogan, and through the chair. So I am always grateful. I'm grateful to see the pep in your step. You come down the stairs and you've got energy, and it's just exciting because I know that you often are, along with your team, are the face for a community that is bright, in my perspective. I think this is something that's not new, and like you said, a few things that you've said aren't new news, but it's a good reminder. But I appreciate the use of authentic experiences as a tether and root to what you do, because just the same as when you meet somebody and they're true to form and they're truly who they are, it's easy to feel drawn to something like that. You know that it's not something that's a show. It's easy to go, yeah, I want to go to that space or place or meet that person, because you know what you're getting is real rather than, yeah. So I appreciate your comment about how the work that you do reminds those of us who live here what is here to celebrate. And Councillor Hirsch said, we have opportunities to celebrate and be the face of this place that we get to live in every day. So I think that's special. My two questions are, what innovative problem solving on behalf of your team over the last year are you most proud of? And what do you look forward to most in 2024, 2025?
Wow. Excellent questions. Thank you. The first innovative bit on the behalf of the team is probably just that they they have to work with me. They have to manage up and corral me and help keep me in line with where we're going as a group. And they've done a remarkable job of that, and the work speaks for itself. The innovative problem solving, I think, has been really us understanding further where our lanes are, where our best value can be invested, and what would be a nice to have, but we might not have the cycles or the capacity to take it on right now, even though that might be the thing that fires my soul or yours right away. Well, I define it like this. There's 100 things we could be doing. There's 40 things we probably should be doing. We have the capacity to do 24 to 28 things well right now. How do we know the 28 are from the 40 that matter and not the 28 from the other 60 that feel good, but aren't going to bring the sorts of outcomes that we're really striving for? And so whether that's innovative or just continuous evolution from a perspective, I think that's been really rewarding for us as our team has grown and matured. And then rephrase, please, for me the second point.
Through the chair. So just what do you look forward to most over the next calendar year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Through the chair, it is June, and I'm absolutely looking forward to getting in front of you and telling you about what's already happened in the 5 months that we've been working. So this is the report on 2023 and some of the things we've seen already activated and engaged in 2024. We're looking forward to our mid-year report and then another opportunity to get in front of you. That's what we're looking forward to. Thank you.
So thank you. It doesn't look like there's any other speakers, so I have a comment and a question, I guess, something I would like you to expand on. So the pep in your step, I think, is directly related to the amount of coffee you drink. And I'm glad that you mentioned the importance of facilities for the future. I really appreciate that, because I think it's easy to localize it and think of what's best for us as citizens, but trying to get the synergies of tourism as part of it. Could you just expand a little bit on how you see that? I'm not asking for any specifics in your opinion, but how do you see the synergies with tourism and facilities for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And it goes back to authenticity. If there's a community locally that loves something and they have the opportunity in the space to engage and experience that, then they're naturally either drawn to invite or they're going to be a magnet for people who are drawn to the same thing. And so we have an incredible pickleball court in the north end of the city. And it's not one or two pickleball courts here and one or two there. It's a space, and it allows the community to gather, and it allows the community to gather in a way that is both noticed, and you can invite out-of-town folk to participate as well. So disc golf is another great example. We know from talking with the associations, both provincially and nationally, that when there is a desire to host a national level graded disc golf tournament, you need a certain quality of course and a certain number of holes all within a driving space within that space. And so when a community rolls out a 9-hole as a test, that's great, because what we're doing is we're testing the appetite for the community. But what we need to do is continue to ladder up, which is what your facilities and recreation department has done in adding course capacity, so that we're, if not right now, we're very close to being able to host potentially a national disc golf event. And that, again, sets our community in a certain rarefied air from a national perspective. It allows us to talk and celebrate about things that matter. The test is important too. If you test the 9-hole or the 18-hole and nobody comes out, it means that for whatever reason, that doesn't have a demand or draw in your community. And the last thing what you or anyone else in the community wants is me investing in it to try and manufacture demand, to pretend that that's where the visitor's going to find their joy if they visit, because that's not honest.
Thank you for that. And I don't see any other questions, so thank you for your presentation, and have a great night. Always entertaining.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. So now we're going to move on to new business. And just for clarity, we have a number of presentations tonight and a number of motions. So basically, we will hear from the presenters, ask any questions of the presenters that come up, and then I'll call for a motion before we begin deliberation. So it'll be a repeated process through the night. So thank you, and we'll move on to 10.1. And 10.1 is Project Clear Horizon, which is potential transactions, and our sponsor is Energy, Land, and Environment, and I asked Acting City Manager to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very pleased to have in front of you a briefing note regarding Project Clear Horizon potential transactions. The recommendation is to approve the potential transactions as defined and discussed in the May 21st closed council meeting, subject to agreements on terms and conditions acceptable to the city manager and city solicitor. Managing Director Pancoast is here to answer any questions.
So seeing no questions, I'll ask for a motion.
That's my cue. With the will of council, I move that council approves the potential transaction or transactions as defined and discussed in the May 21st, 2024 closed council meeting, subject to agreements on terms and conditions acceptable to the city manager and city solicitor, and B, directs administration to provide appropriate details to the public in the form of a news release as soon as practical after the parties or the transactions are mutually ready to do so.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any questions or deliberation? Councillor Canodal?
I'm just wondering if I could make a friendly amendment. I'm not sure if maybe I'm misunderstanding the language or if it's actually spelt incorrectly. Practicable. Is that a word? It is? Okay. I thought it was a misspelling. Bear with me.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to 10.2, which is request for funding, Alberta government. It's a policing sponsor. City manager, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair to council, I'm pleased to have Chief Murphy with us here from Medicine Hat Police Service. We've seen a recent period in Alberta where we've seen some funding from the province to our major metros to help equip and supply officers for downtown areas to improve downtown areas. We've seen some improvements, some money for improvements in smaller police forces across the province. And so we believe that there's a good opportunity here to pen a letter and ask the province to consider the city of Medicine Hat for some additional public officer, police officer funding for the downtown area.
Thank you. Did Chief Murphy going to come down and speak to the issue? Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for giving us a few moments. I'll be very brief. So what you've seen in the briefing note is what the acting city manager has mentioned. There's the provincial government in the last year has given some funding to the two largest police services in the province, that being the two largest municipal police services being the Edmonton Police Service and the Calgary Police Service, related to issues that are tied to mental health and addiction in their downtown and related to transit in those cities. And in addition, the Alberta Sheriffs were given a funding increase by the provincial government, as were the this town of Coaldale is also given some ongoing funding regarding policing. I'm certainly not here to suggest that that's not appropriate to provide extra funding in those communities. What I will suggest is that we've seen similar proportionate issues in our city related to mental health and addiction, specifically in our downtown over the last few years. In a citizen survey that we did this past fall, we saw a sharp increase in the feeling of a lack of safety people have in the downtown and the flats, and that's concerning. We did a project last August and September where we put additional police officers out with downtown patrol unit, but in a different shift. So in effect, we had officers during the day and during the evening. We did that using overtime, which is not feasible in the long term. That had a positive impact. We didn't even tell anybody we did it because we wanted to see how people would react and what they'd notice. What we heard back from the business owners was comments to us saying, we don't know what you're doing, but we can see a difference. So we know that this approach does work. Asking for 2 officers doesn't sound like much, but it's proportionate to the size of our city we have and according to what the other cities have received. So we asked for support of council to advocate to the provincial government, the Ministry of Emergency Services and Public Safety on our behalf.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Chief Murphy on this issue? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, Chief Murphy, I'm wondering if there's been any effort to collaborate with other municipal police services, smaller ones like Lacombe, Tabor, Lakeshore, Camrose. Those are the ones that pop into my mind, because I think they would be experiencing similar issues and not maybe have the influence that Edmonton and Calgary might to make pitch for funds.
Agreed. And I think due to specific, I'll speak to Medicine Hat, due to where we're located in the province, we're tucked away in the southeast corner of the province and can easily be forgotten about here. I think the chiefs of the mid to small size law enforcement agencies do feel that we are neglected to some degree. Our issues are proportionate to what the big cities have. We're just smaller. So of course, it's not going to be to the scope or the scale that they have. Nonetheless, it's a concern to our citizens. I think over the years, a lot of costs have been, I've heard it in this council chambers, costs have been downloaded to municipalities. So I think it's reasonable, based on what the large cities have been given, that consideration be given to the city of Medicine Hat for something like this.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, and through the chair, Chief Murphy, I just wanted to tell you that I will support this. I know that as we're going into the summer months, it's going to get warmer and people are going to be sleeping outside more and more. And so it just increases our vulnerable population, and it's not just the safety of our citizens, it's their safety as well. And I think sometimes people forget that our vulnerable are also in need of protection, and allowing some of these camps to stay where they are is dangerous to their own safety. So I do appreciate, I will support this. But I did have one question. How does this work, and are we standing alone? We have RCMP on one side, RCMP on the other, municipal in the middle. Do we have a good enough relationship to work together, or is that a no-go because it's federal versus municipal? How does that work?
So we already do work together. We work together in a joint forces operation with Alert here in Medicine Hat that's based out of our facility. So we have that relationship already. Whenever the RCMP has, if they have a staffing, if maybe we're short in staffing that's close by, our resources that are working will assist until they can get additional resources down here. So we work together already. It's this is a matter of we're the police of jurisdiction in this city, so it's not that we can ask the RCMP to come and police with us, do operational policing in our city. I don't think that's appropriate, and I think they have their own issues to deal with, and they're relatively short-staffed in the rural areas, so I don't think that's an ask we can make. I do think this is a reasonable ask for us to make, to ask for 2 additional resources. I don't think it's extravagant. And if anybody was to ask us, we initiated the peace team this year, which you heard about back in April. So we're making big efforts with the resources we already have for no additional cost to try to get people out of the system, out of encampments. And we've, as of last week, visited, I think it was 38 encampments. And we took a lot of people out of living in that situation where they're at risk, and try to get them housed and get them some addiction help. I truly don't believe this is unreasonable. I know it's easy. I'm not the one on this side of the microphone, so it's easy for me to say that. And I know it's different from your chair, and it's again different from the provincial government chair, but I think it's a very reasonable ask.
If you don't mind. No, I absolutely do support you. I asked the question because sometimes I think there's not a good understanding of how we work together, what the different roles are, as you see so many times, that why didn't they do this? Why don't, and there is actually a really good working relationship. So I think if I have the opportunity to bring that to light, I think you'd have better luck with your funding request if you had a bit of pep in your step, though.
Maybe I could be like Mr. Anderson. I could be more enthusiastic. I've never been described that way, but maybe I'll have a chat when I go up and chat with him.
Councillor Dubanowski.
Through the chair, I think Mr. Anderson's key is coffee, so Chief, that's all you have to have. But I don't really have a question. Obviously, Councillor Hirsch and I sit on the Police Commission, and so we're apprised of this. I mean, we're equal recipients to the request before council today, and certainly it's our hope that council will endorse it. I guess just a comment, if I may, if this is appropriate time, is that the request being very reasonable when it comes to the arguments that have been already communicated. We think of the bigger centers. We often think of their jurisdiction when it comes to other things that are outside of Medicine Hat, like health and education to some extent. But when it comes to policing, all matters are equal. When it comes to the initiatives that each community is grappling with, in particular in their core, Medicine Hat is no exception to that. What I like about that, and I guess notionally, is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we have the bigger centers who are able to work in concert with the province to capture some additional funding for important initiatives, I agree with your point about proportionate funding. And hopeful not only that we will all endorse this, but that the opportunity to be heard and be supported will be granted. So thank you for coming before us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It appears we may be deliberating, so if we could just keep it to questions for our next two speakers, and then we can put a motion on the floor. Thank you. Councillor Hirsch.
Well, I might just do that. I guess as a matter of principle, I just wanted the council to know that we did have a discussion today at Police Commission, and the Police Commission is fully supportive of the chief's position and application. So, and then I have also thoughts once we, if we can move past that, and I'll make my comments after that. Thanks.
Okay, ask for a motion.
Okay, at this time, I would move that council directs administration to finalize the letter of the Minister of Public, to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services requesting support for policing funding as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It looks like we have a number, or we still have, we don't need the vote list yet. Speaker list, please. Thank you. Councillor Knoll is up first.
Thank you, and through the chair, to Chief. So this, for me, is easy to support. It's a visible issue. It's an issue of equitable support coming from the provincial government. I think that whatever additional resources we can innovate, we can gather from other sources, is only going to allow for a more robust system to show up for these individuals in need. Obviously, you have been a great advocate for, you don't always need more, right? But this is a situation where more resources in this situation is needed. So I appreciate your willingness and desire to come forward and to make a request, and yeah, I'm on board, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch.
So just my comments, I have two of them. First off, the city of Medicine Hat certainly not alone with sharing some of the similar issues with our downtown and our vulnerable population of other communities. But yet it's interestingly enough, some of the municipalities receive funding and some have not. So I guess the intention is to highlight those sort of examples, indicate that precedence has been set now, and we would certainly appreciate our commensurate limit in terms of what I think is fair, what Chief indicated in terms of relative funding to what our needs are. The other piece I'm wondering, maybe make a note for one of us to take it back, but I'm wondering if if we can maybe take this issue away as a form of a resolution at Alberta Munis. This certainly is something, again, that we don't stand in isolation with. Certainly other communities are feeling this way, so it goes back to what Councillor Robinson indicated in terms of looking at other jurisdictions, and certainly maybe we can get some support at Alberta Munis in terms of that direction to the province. So just my thoughts. Thank you.
So seeing no other speakers, thanks, Chief. We'll vote on this.
Thank you.
And that's unanimous. Thanks so much. We'll move on to 10.3, which is appointment to the vacancy on Police Commission. Do I have a mover?
Through the chair, I move that council ratifies the appointment of a new member, Onini Chukwunarenea, as determined by secret ballot vote in closed session on June 3rd, 2024, to fill the current vacancy on the Police Commission with the term expiring on December 31st, 2026.
I will second that.
And I apologize for the pronunciation as best as I could today.
Any speakers? So seeing none, we will vote. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to committee business. So we have a number of committee business items. We'll start with 11.1, which is City of Medicine Hat Environmental Framework presentation. The sponsor is Energy, Land, and Environment. We have Mr. Kevin Redding and Adria Coombs. Acting City Manager Stouth, if you want to introduce this topic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you today is the long-awaited report on the Medicine Hat Environmental Framework. Our presenters are here, and we are asking council to adopt the report and accept the action plans for information. So with that, I will ask Managing Director Pancoast if she wants to supplement.
Thank you, Acting City Manager, and through the chair. It really is exciting to be at this point in the process. This is something that Council asked of us some time ago, and it is a foundational 25-year environmental framework that is in front of you for Council's consideration. It really is an ambitious piece of work, particularly for a municipality of our complexity, and perhaps even a signature item of this council. And just to suggest, topics and goals have already been approved by council, but the framework is here in its entirety for your consideration as noted. And otherwise, perhaps a bit premature, but I'll offer a congratulations to the team for the work put into this point. I think you'll be as pleased as I am with the product that you'll see in front of you. So with that, I'll perhaps turn it over to Manager Coombs. Thank you.
Thank you, Managing Director Pancoast, and good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here presenting our final environmental framework to yourselves. You've seen me a few times over the course of the last the last year or so. So here I am to wrap it up, I'm hoping. So this has been a huge effort by our department, by our consultant WSP, internal departments, external stakeholder groups, and I'd also like to mention that we have had some external funding by Municipal Climate Change Action Center for the Climate Resiliency Capacity Building Program. And as part of this final presentation, I'm just going to take you through some of the key highlights of the project itself, and then run you through the overall content of the document so that you can see that. So the vision within the My MH Municipal Development Plan has basically set the stage for our city's commitment to environmental responsibility on behalf of our residents. So the future commitment to sustainability is moving towards the middle of the 21st century. Commitment to long-term sustainability is the city's top priority. This involves making bold choices in striving for environmental responsibility and thriving residents. From there, we have your council's strategic plan, 2023 to 2026, that further committed the city to demonstrating the importance of the environmental sustainability with Council Priority 6.5 to develop and implement an environmental framework with prioritized strategies and actions. So with the development of the framework, we are going to see benefits from that framework, which will consist of an alignment of all of our various internal policies, regulations, and initiatives towards our city's sustainability goals. We will, it'll inform our decision-making process for the integration of environmental sustainability into our operations, our planning, and our governance, and it will empower council with information to make decisions aligned with our overall long-term goals for our community. So this graphic kind of depicts where the environmental framework lies within all of our overarching governance documents. So you can see we've taken into account the MGA, our South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan, the Council's Strategic Priorities, and our MDP. So it'll lie underneath the framework, making sure that all of those are in alignment. And then it will help guide our city's plans and policies from an environmental sustainability and stewardship standpoint. So you can see it'll play into some of the things like our transportation master plan, our parks and rec master plan, facilities for the future, various area structure plans, and like our strategic fire services strategic plan. So those will all have components that will come from the environmental framework. So as some highlights from the project, so this gives you an overview of what the level of effort that went into the project. We reviewed, we as our team and our consultants, we reviewed 78 technical documents. So those would consist of bylaws, codes, regulations, the River Valley study. We had 29 policies and plans that we reviewed. We reviewed peer municipal plans from an environmental framework standpoint, waste management strategy, parks master plan. So those all went into the review and development of this document. We had representatives from 22 city teams or departments that were engaged in this process. We had 17, I'll jump ahead to the 17 bubble. We had 17 representatives from 17 external stakeholders that were consulted. We did 21 stakeholder engagement sessions. So those consisted of workshops, interviews, an open house. We participated in the municipal mingle. We've come to you for 2 city council committee of the whole sessions. We've done one open council. We've had a Shape Your City page. And then we've also, in support of the environmental framework, we developed 6 supporting documents. So those would have consisted of our baseline materiality assessment. We had a consultation and engagement strategy, what we heard reports, and then some other background documents, as well as our supporting action plan. So following our presentation to yourselves in December, it was evident that there was further refinement of the strategies and actions that needed to be done prior to full council support of our framework. So we went back and engaged in senior leadership for further prioritization of the actions and strategies, and as well to understand the financial implications of those proposed actions on our upcoming future budgets. So we brought that additional clarity to Council Committee of the Whole in March and provided that detailed review of all of those actions for your information at that point. And now we are here to look at the approval of the final environmental framework. And we are presenting the action plan as information, given that it will be a a continually improved document. It'll be subject to change over the course of time with various priorities that the city has, regulation changes, and budget implications. So that'll just be presented for your information. So now to go into the framework document itself, in the content of the document. So one of the key things that was really important in the document itself was to really relay the uniqueness of the city of Medicine Hat. So not only do we have, like in comparison to other municipalities in Alberta and Canada, we have the 330 days of sunshine. We have a major transportation units, transportation corridors. So we have the Trans-Canada, we have Highway 3, we have the CPR mainline, we have the beautiful South Saskatchewan River Valley. But in addition to that, a main thing to note is the complexity of our city organization. So we have our standard municipal services. We have Parks and Recreation Department. We have water and wastewater utility services, stormwater utility services. But in that, we also run and operate our own water treatment plant, our wastewater treatment plant. We have a landfill. We have a compost facility. So those are pretty significant facilities that we run and operate. Then we also have our, in addition to our uniqueness, we run and operate a power plant and electrical distribution system, and then a gas production side of things and a gas distribution system. So you put all of those things together and we are a very complex municipality. And so that we wanted to frame that in the uniqueness part of Medicine Hat and make sure that people understand that. And I think those are reflected in the complexity of the action plan that we had to see as well. Within the document, we refer to our policy alignment. So as I mentioned before, we made sure that we had our overarching guidance documents, and we are in alignment with that. And then it'll describe how we have we will be supporting, the environmental framework will be supporting the other policies and plans that will be developed or are in the process of being developed. So, and some of the initiatives that are already underway. So through engagement with our internal and external stakeholders, we developed an overall vision statement for the framework. So the City of Medicine Hat envisions a sustainable future where we demonstrate environmental stewardship, protect our natural resources, and enhance the well-being of the community through partnerships and a shared responsibility. From there, we developed these guiding principles that were based on our City Council strategic plan and our MyMH municipal development plan. So I won't read these out, but we have these 8 guiding principles that then we built the strategic priorities upon. So I'll just run you through those. And as we presented in December and was approved, we have 5 environmental topics. So water, energy, air, ecosystem and agriculture, recycling and waste management, and community and land development. And I'll touch on these a little bit more in subsequent slides. Within the document itself, the report, we wanted to have a high-level review or high-level explanation of the implementation. So basically, we're going to take a plan, do, check, act approach to the implementation of the environmental framework. So the framework itself represents the plan, part of this plan. Then the do is executing the actions identified on the action plan. So we'll do that as the do. The check is where we're going to check back into our progress. So we're going to have those monitoring and measuring the KPIs. We're going to look at those, and I'll probably be here reporting on an annual basis on our progress. And then the act is modifying the action plan and continuing to implement the actions. Within each one of our topics, we break it down into these subcategories or subtopics where we explain. We have a what we heard portion, we have an overview, context, where climate resilience, where we talk about the climate piece of each topic, related initiatives, and then we get into our goals, targets, strategies, and our proposed actions. So those are itemized and detailed within each section of the report, each topic section. So as a summary here, we have 13 goals for the City of Medicine Hat. I'd like to also maybe reiterate I'm not sure if I did it in previous presentations, but this is a corporate strategy for the City of Medicine Hat. So we are going to be executing these actions on behalf of the City of Medicine Hat in our operations, and then hoping to lead by example, to lead the community by example. So the next slides will show the goals and strategies for each of the topics. And since you've seen all of them in March, and I know that you have a packed agenda, I can just go through each one, showing you the slides, and then we can I can take a couple of the action plans items that were identified as high priority ones for each of those topics, or I can go through in further detail if you want to stop me and ask some questions there. So our water topic, we had 2 goals, and within those goals, a couple of the high priority action plans were one, to develop a citywide water management strategy. So we want to look at all of our operating departments and make sure that we're taking things like water resource protection, source protection. We want to look at our municipal water utility operation and maintenance. We want to look at our economic population growth, and we want to look at legislation and climate issues and develop somewhat similar, I would say, to the environmental framework, an approach to how we're going to manage our water from a corporate perspective. Another one was with regards to the stormwater management planning is to develop a stormwater bylaw. So I'll move forward. Energy and air. So you can see we have 5 goals within energy and air. Some of the prioritized action items were looking at grant funding to see if we can support support personnel and oh my goodness, I'm losing my words. Support a position that would support assisting the action plan and the implementation of this. So looking at greenhouse gas emissions and benchmarking, energy benchmarking, someone who will support that and lead that on behalf of the corporation. So looking at grant opportunities for that. Municipal energy manager is one of the grant opportunities. Prioritizing low VOC emitting materials for new construction and renovation. So that's another action item that's been proposed. Developing an energy transition or a clean energy strategy, and as well as participating in the Energy Innovation Challenge. Within the ecosystem and agriculture, so a couple of the items are to develop an integrated pest management plan. So deciding how we're going to manage weeds and manage deer and some of those things, gophers. Increase our tree canopy through the city and conduct a citywide biophysical assessment. Under recycling and waste management was moving forward with the organic food waste composting pilot project, so that was one of the action items, and investigate waste diversion plans for city projects, so we can reduce the amount of waste going to the landfill. community and land development. So one of the things was investigating park and ride opportunities for some of our bigger major events, creating a brownfield inventory, which will be part of our underutilized land strategy, and planning of new communities with access to open space trails that are connected to other open spaces across the city. So the action plan really details all of these things, goes through each topic and strategy and shows under which goal which actions apply. It also identifies our high, medium, and low priority actions depending on how our executive or our senior leadership decided that they wanted to prioritize these actions. So within that proposed action plan, keeping in mind that that will change on possibly an annual basis. So our next steps. So as an outcome of this session, we're hoping that you approve the environmental framework. We are going to develop an implementation plan, so that will be used for internal city use, for operational use, and that'll give us communication and collaboration protocol and a continuous improvement monitoring and an annual reporting guidelines there. We will be presenting that implementation plan to our key internal stakeholders in the fall of 2024, and then we'll just continue to implement and progress the environmental framework further. So, yeah, thank you for your time, and I really want to thank you for your support and input into this process. We've had a few sessions with you, and we really have appreciated your input to the sessions. This has been a really interesting and challenging process given the complexity of our organization, so making sure that everybody has had an equal opportunity to provide inputs and making sure that some of the priorities that they may conflict, but finding a balance to those conflicting priorities. So I'm really excited to continue to be part of this implementation and hope that I'm back here to do an annual report for you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So I'll ask if there's any questions of the presenter, and I see there's a motion, and we'll do that after questions of the presenter are complete. Any questions? I see Councillor Hirsch is up.
Just a quick question. So, Manager Coombs, thank you very much for the presentation. You had indicated, and I'll speak to it a little bit later, but that this is just not a document meant to get dusty. So how often or under what cadence would you make some adjustments to this document? Is there a particular plan, or is it just going to be as it gets reviewed and gets updated?
Thank you, and through the chair, I believe, so we haven't yet developed the implementation plan, but we're going to detail those things through the implementation plan, and I anticipate it's going to be an annual review because I think that it's going to be important that we see the progress on an annual basis. We did develop an environmental sustainability webpage where we tried to combine all of the good things that the city across the organization is doing, so further developing that on an annual basis, as well as presenting sort of an annual report. I have to figure out what a template of that looks like, but I'd like to have that done on an annual basis.
I don't see any more questions. I just have one, and it might be for Director Redden, I'm not sure, but I just go to the briefing note and the potential risks impacts under financial. So maybe if you could just explain, it says that there's no funding request, that it is a budgeted item, and that there's $200,000 that come out of our operating budget and $80,000 in grants. Could someone just summarize that for our community so they can understand, I guess, that financial piece, please?
Certainly, to the chair. You may recall back in December 2022, I came before council to ask for the original budget of $200,000 to complete the framework. At that time, we received approval. In the meantime, a grant opportunity came up from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center to develop a climate resiliency assessment and an action plan associated with that. That was an additional $80,000 that we received in grant funding, and we embedded the findings of that study into the framework.
Perfect, thank you. Could we get a motion on the floor, please?
I will. Through the chair, I move that we approve the City of Medicine Hat Environmental Framework Report and receive it for information. The action plan identifies various high, medium, and low priority actions that are planned to be undertaken over the next 25 years, recognizing that the action plan is meant to adapt and evolve through time, with specific actions being subject to budgetary approvals and timeline revisits as required in the city budget review and approval process.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Dubanowski is our first speaker.
Through the chair, I have comments. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to thank Director Redden and Manager Coombs as well for bringing the environmental framework in front of us. I do want to acknowledge that at the onset of this process, I was a little skeptical. I've said that before. I'll say it again since this is D-Day. And but I've come to appreciate through the whole process, and not just our part, but through the learnings of the other participants and stakeholder engagements, that this was a very comprehensive process that touched on my initial concerns were around how or who would be contacted and what weighting they would have in the report. But in the end, the derivative of it really is, and I was worried about being, in the end, a little bit of a fluffy document, but I will say in the end, it's an extraordinarily practical document. The goals and the strategies are achievable, meaningful, time specific, and certainly there are going to be some budgetary through the years, budgetary constraints or realities that councils will have to deal with. But I do want to acknowledge that, and I appreciate the fact that there are KPIs and checks as you initiated or indicated through this process, which I would have expected, but that it's overtly part of the process and will evolve in an ongoing fashion. But I want to acknowledge that it was a success, not because I declare it so, but because what I see in front of me meets my litmus test, and certainly I want to acknowledge that and thank you for everything you've done to bring this before us, and I certainly hope council will endorse it.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, and through the chair. So just a couple of comments. I'm thrilled about this, and even more so than I think the councillors around the table that are in support of this is the happiness that comes from the community on something that they've been wanting and waiting for a long time. And so this has been quite a lengthy process, as you said. There's been a lot of consultation, which has been fantastic, because I know then that what we have before us is really representative of people in the community and the needs of the community. So the other thing I really appreciate about this process has been that we've seen the priorities in the action plan shift, and I think some of that has, even within our current situation of ongoing drought, that has impacted that. So it's been great to see how, even in the process of developing it, the change has come about, and we know that that change will continue as it's implemented, and that some of that change is dependent on federal and provincial regulations and priorities as well. And of course, we just, yesterday or the day before, the federal government announced a $530 million supports to municipalities, to cities, to deal with climate change adaptation. So I know that there will be announcements like that coming forward, and that this plan allows for change and adaptation with those changes as well. So thank you for everyone's work on this, and I'm very excited to support this.
Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, and through the chair, I want to piggyback off what Councillor Dubanowski said in regards to this being a document that is not just philosophical, is very much a concrete, specific, guided document that will allow not only the staff of the municipality to attach or tether to particular goals, but also I see the community being able to visualize what is happening and be able to along with your support, monitor how we are making progress as an organization. And I think that's huge. I think that what you've done here with your consultants and with your team is something that we can use as a model to build other frameworks like this. So not to say that what we have existing in other departments doesn't have a lot of work that goes into it, but I just think that the concreteness, the color codedness, I would even say from a teacher's standpoint, it's the ability to have iconography or like a flat icon that goes with things. There's so much that allows anybody to be able to read this document. So well done. I'm happy to support what you have in front of us. I look forward to the evolution, as Councillor Hirsch alluded to. How is this going to evolve and change? And I think as we exist on the planet, we have to adapt and evolve and change. So I'm glad that that's built into this. Overall, great work. Thank you.
Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, I don't like puzzles. You know, there's those people that just love to do a jigsaw puzzle, and the bigger it is, the happier they are. I'm not one of those people. And as I was sitting here, I was sort of thinking that really what you've done is shown me the front of the puzzle box, but you dumped over the puzzle pieces and turned them over one by one. And what I'm hearing is as you consulted different departments, you realized they had probably put together enough pieces. Oh yeah, that's a bird, that's a tree, that's a whatever. But this whole plan fills in all of the part, and actually I always start the puzzle with the frame. And so I think that what you've done here is tremendous. I'm really pleased to see it. I'm going to thank you for myself, but thank you more on my future grandchildren's behalf, because I think they'll be very grateful this work was done. I like two things about it, especially chapter 5, because it really sets out, like the beginning is a lot of his exposition, how we got to this place, but 5 gets into and this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it, and this is how it's going to help. And then, God, I love an Excel table. And so at the end, the attachment 2, where if I don't have time to read all of that, then I can say, oh, what is this actually about? It's right there in attachment 2. And what I like about attachment 2 is how similar it is to the Parks and Rec Master Plan, in that you can really see the high, the medium, the low goals set out in a way that I think will really help future administration and future councils understand what this is all about. So obviously, I'm going to support it and be grateful I didn't have to put the puzzle together, but it's all extremely well done, and will mean a lot to our community for a very long time. So you should be very proud of the work you've done. Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, I think I might be the last speaker on this, and I kind of did it on purpose because I wanted to kind of wrap up a lot of the different opinions stated here. But first off, started by the fact that your starting point was what we heard. And what that means is that we're in for a long adventure, because anyone can be dictated to. We might have a great idea and then we roll it into a policy, but yet no one embraces it. So what you've done with what we heard is absolutely enlisted people within the city Medicine Hat, external people. I mean, you listed off a lot of the heavy lifting you did in terms of the citizen meetings, the outreach that you did was just absolutely amazing. So I think it's important for us to understand the gravity of the work. Managing Director Pankos called it a signature document, and I actually would echo that. You look at the process that it took on, but have to understand that the heavy lifting, you know, and I just read my notes here, committee, now council, understands the heavy lifting that was enormous. As the work in compilation, as Councillor Robbins indicated, that you took good work from everyone of all the different departments, but had to put it all together. So, then the compilation covered all departments of their good work underway and through their KPIs and the measurements and all that stuff, and the plans for the future. And that's the part that I'm quite happy about, that this isn't going to be just a dusty document. It's going to be a living document. And what I really, really want to put the stamp on is this is not virtue signaling. This is an absolute signature document that is meant for us from a practicality and template for us of how we work and play in Medicine Hat and how our city manages it. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Sorry, Councillor Hirsch, I did think you were going to wrap, and I was going to whisper at you, but just a couple of points I want to make. Obviously, support and echo of the comments that have already been made, and the one thing that really struck me is how everything really in the long term is connected to savings of environment, savings of money and capital. When you look at our long-term, the composting project and where that could take us, changing our fleet over, all these different things also in the long term, to me, relate savings in capital and all those things. So, you can just actually feel the change already in the last year with some of the projects that have came forward because we're talking this talk. And I want to thank you. And Councillor Hirsch, did you want to finish off? I apologize for that, but I wanted to get those comments out.
It's all good, thank you. Mr.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we will vote. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much for the presentation. We will move on to 11.2, which is Clean Energy Improvement Program Financial Agreement. The sponsor is Energy, Land and Environment. Acting City Manager Stouth, if you want to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is a signature delegation for the clean air. I lost it. Clean Energy Improvement Agreements and associated change orders. So this delegation moves the signing from the mayor to the managing director of Energy, Land and Environment. The city clerk remains as the secondary signatory. This is an opportunity to create nimbleness in approving these applications, quick turnaround, and I'll ask Managing Director Pancoast if she's got any supplemental information.
Thank you, Acting City Manager, and through the chair, in the aim of practicality, this is recognizing that as part of the Clean Energy Improvement Program that we are expecting to go live later this month. There is an expectation to enter into agreements with participating residents and businesses related to the program, but the expected turnaround time by Alberta municipalities is 3 days. So that is quite a short turnaround time. So a jurisdictional review has confirmed that other municipalities have taken this delegated approach in an effort to shorten the turnaround time. So this is simply a request to follow that approach and identify myself as designated officer in order to allow these delegated approvals. But I will note that that would then also allow me to further delegate, if appropriate to do so, to management level to ensure that the appropriate oversight is provided. Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing there's kind of no presenters, I think I'll ask for a motion on this, and we could ask questions and deliberation after.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, I move that council approve the delegation of signing authority for clean energy improvement agreements and associated change orders from the mayor to managing Director of Energy, Land and Environment, or delegate, and that the city clerk continues to be the second signatory for such documents.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any speakers? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. We will now move on to 11.3, which is Bevo Farms Limited seeking tax cancellation, and the sponsor is Corporate Services. City Manager, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in front of council is a decision item or council report for council to deliberate and debate. Bevo Farms was seeking tax cancellation on the property that they've moved into, the former Aurora cannabis building. So staff have looked at this and are recommending that we don't grant a full tax cancellation for the property because we are adhering to the Municipal Government Act that speaks to when those changes need to occur in the usage to change the classification of, or the occupancy. So that's the briefing note that's in front of you. Staff recommendation not to grant it, full tax cancellation. Corporate Services Committee was looking for further deliberation. I'll ask Managing Director Egert if he's got anything further.
Thank you, Acting City Manager Stout, and through the chair. Great introduction, and maybe if I can just fill in just a few blanks just for information. As Managing Director Stout had mentioned, this is the former Aurora site. The MGA clearly states council's role and responsibility and authority in terms of canceling or reducing taxes under Section 347. And the test would be whether or not council considers it equitable. And so equitable is something that needs to be discussed. The letter that we have included in the briefing note is a request to council asking for a reduction in property taxes as assessed. The property that in question was assessed based on the status of the property as at December 31st, 2023. And so as of that date, the property under consideration was not used for farming operations. Specifically, farming activity did not commence until April 2024. As Managing Director Stout had mentioned, we're recommending to council that they deny the request as the assessment legislation does not allow for intent, but rather states that it's used for farming operations. We have included in the briefing note options for council's consideration, including partial exemptions. Those were reviewed with the committee. We had also noted during the committee discussion a similar situation in 2017 related to a senior home that was under construction and had not yet met the full test. And that particular property did receive a tax reduction, I believe, of approximately $80,000. Lastly, it should be noted that Bevo Farms has filed a formal complaint or an appeal as part of their assessment. That appeal deadline was, I believe, May 7th. So that appeal is in the queue to be heard. We had discussed a committee as well that if council so decides to cancel, reduce, or defer any of those taxes, that we believe it would be appropriate for the appeal to be withdrawn. So with that, I will yield the mic back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's really important that we ask our questions before we entertain a motion. So do we have anybody that would like to put questions forward? Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Councillor McGrogan, and through the chair to Managing Director Egert. Sorry, I'm looking, you're at Managing Director South's spot. So what I'm interested in is if there's the possibility, because I'm seeing the situation, I've had the opportunity to talk about this at Corporate Services Committee, and now I'm looking at it through the lens of feeling like this. So the ultimate, the goal was to get to 1/3 or to 50% farming operations. They've made it closer to that 1/3 farming operations capacity. But we're also looking at the April to December date being the kind of the timeline that this 1/3 farming operation exists within. So in my perspective, we've got, so number 2, prorate the tax based on first date of raising seedlings, which was April of this year. And then we're also not at full farming capacity at that particular point. Now, I'm trying not to delegate or discuss. So I'm wondering is there some math that we can do to kind of find a hybrid between these two numbers so that we can consider that currently we're at 1/3 farming operation from April to December, because I think it would be amiss to not consider the dates as well as the capacity. Now, I would even be willing to consider if 50% is the goal for capacity for 2024, I would even be willing to look at it as rather than 1/3, 1/2. If we looked at 1/2 and considered April to December, I could do some cross multiplication, but I would prefer that you do that for me, Dennis, please and thank you. So my question is, what is the number, and would you be able to provide that through the chair?
Just looking at City Assessor Sturkenberg, she might have some comments on some of the logic that she would apply had the date been met. As we had put the options together, Councillor Knodel, a few things to consider, and I think some arguments probably may be a little stronger than others. First of all, the pro rata farm, full farm exemption from January to March, we simply used the date that we felt the test was met in terms of farming operation actually taking place, which was the planting of the seedlings in April. So the pure math, January to March, and then April to December. So not all of the building would be used for farming operations at that time. The second one as 1/3, that is really their intent in terms of the phasing of the building, in terms of using it for farm operation. And currently, their intent for 2024 is to use that 1/3 of that building for farming operations. The third option, 50% farming operations, I think that's probably a bigger picture in terms of the intent of how much of the building eventually will be used. And I think, you know, especially in the near term, it would be maybe around 50%. So a lot of those are a little bit, maybe not scientific, but maybe something to consider with respect to whether or not it's equitable.
Through the chair, if you don't mind. I think if I can clarify what I was looking for, rather than having two separate, I understand the logic that got us to providing those two options. One is based on seedlings being established in the building. The other is based on usage of space. Now, my brain is going, I would like to consider both of those things when making a decision on the number. So if there was and I apologize that this didn't come to me earlier in the package being provided and me sending an email and going, Managing Director Eggert, is there a way that we can hybrid number 2 and number 3 to form kind of a mixed result that considers both the date that the seedlings were established and the usage of space? Now, it would, in my perspective, be more economical for Bevo, to just consider space, and more economical for the ratepayer if we went just considering the dates of the seedlings established. But if we were to find a middle zone considering both of those variables and do the math, that's what I was looking for. What is the new number? And now I understand that's probably a revision to our particular agenda here, and I'd have to ask that we go away and come back with that particular option. So I'm looking forward to hearing from my colleagues around the table, but I'm hopeful that perhaps if I get what I'm hopeful for, that I could have that in-between number, but we'll hear from others today.
Mayor Clark.
If I may, through the chair, I just wanted to make sure that I understand what you mean by your suggestion. You would say, so on page 321, prorate the tax based on first date of raising seedlings from April to December based on a tax of 1/3 as farming operations? Is that what you mean? Okay. And what that number would be? Okay.
Councillor Dubanowski.
Through the chair, just seeking clarity, are you looking for comments as well prior to a motion, only because we have a variety of motions, or do you?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, because I've been sitting here. It seems to me that we have a couple of different ways we could put a motion on the floor. There's a couple recommended motions, and it appears that it might be best, I'm looking at the awkwardness of this, that we perhaps put a motion on the floor.
I will do so.
And then debate it specifically, and then we can make amendments if that works.
Yeah.
How does that suit the rest of council? Would that work? Let's put a motion on the
So
table.
for the
shall we?
sake, Mr. Chairman, to get a discussion and conversation, I guess, and support one way or the other, I will put a motion on the floor. I move that council does not grant any tax cancellation for the property owned by 2105657 Alberta Limited, known as Bevo Farms Limited.
Do we have a seconder?
For the purpose of getting it on the table, I will second that motion.
Okay, let's go to the speakers list. Councillor Dumanowski, do you have something further?
Yeah, just comments to support movement of the motion. So I think staff have done a great job explaining kind of the background information as far as their recommendation. I certainly don't want it to be lost on anyone that there's an appreciation for the corporate entity as known as Bevo Farms Limited in our city. There's consideration before us in the context of some timing implications or growth, et cetera, and certainly those aren't lost to me. Those are unusual, unique circumstances, but I'd put my confidence in the assessment department and staff that the appropriate legislation, the appropriate parameters as established by the provincial government when it comes to assessment were followed to the letter of the law. I'm reminded that not only a short time ago, a number of times ago, but 2 weeks ago, we had a resident before us asking for us to consider the MGA, where council deemed equitable to do so, to cancel the fees associated with tax penalties, and we elected not to, and we supported staff's recommendation, again, in alignment with previously well-established, clear legislation, parameters, criteria as set out by the province for municipalities such as ourselves. So none of that is, again, I'll end where I started, to suggest that there is no appreciation for what is known as Bevo Farms in our city. It certainly is appreciated, but if we are going to follow an equitable process, and we are going to expect residents who petition in very difficult situations before this council to have their fees waived, and we elect not to because of previously well-established criteria, then I would think we would need to honor the same process here. So I support the motion I put forward wholeheartedly.
Councillor Knodel.
Councillor Van Dyke is in front of me.
Councillor Van Dyke, why don't you go first?
Thank you, through the chair. So Councillor Dumanowski mentioned a few of the things that I had in my notes as well, in that in our last meeting, we voted not to grant a residential tax cancellation because it would be inequitable to the rest of taxpayers. And as this current assessment adheres to the MGA and the MRAT, it would be inequitable to the rest of taxpayers to approve this request, particularly as assessments are based on use at December 31st and not on intentional usage at the time after that date. So I support the current motion as it stands.
Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, and through the chair. So I hear both what Councillor Dumanowski and Councillor Van Dyke have said, and I feel mixed, as I do about many things at this table. And I think that the thing that strikes me as most important about this particular situation is that we're at a situation or a position in our community where the decisions that we make around the table affect whether or not businesses grow, whether or not employers are able to thrive or not. And I do hear the importance of equitable, and equitable meaning fair and impartial. However, I do wonder if the ability for us to make a decision about equality is about equal opportunity that reaches beyond just the rule of this particular guideline. So I'll just explain my thinking and then happy to hear from other counselors. So in the 2 weeks ago, we had a situation where we voted on tax cancellation for an individual. There was a history of not making payments, a history of consideration for lates and extending deadlines to make provisions for that person so that they could be successful in making payments on their account. Now, I see this situation, again, there shouldn't be gray areas in this role because we should be looking at a document and going, yes, this is black or white according to this, this guideline, but I see this as a gray area. I see Bevo as a new, of course they're under the parent company of Aurora, but they are an employer in our community that hasn't got a very long history, and we do have the opportunity to, through this particular situation, support them. So I feel like, to me, this feels like a chance to support them. And I don't know if I agree with the full nixing of an opportunity to give them a tax break here. So I am not going to vote in support of Councillor Dumanowski's motion. I would like to find a happy medium, whether that is a small reduction in taxes or something more significant. I think this is something that we need to discuss further rather than just nix it from the table.
So I just want to stand in support of the motion. I want to say that Bevo Farms has had plenty of opportunity to understand the situation that they're in. As far as taxes go, being, if you look at who their parent company is. And I think when you think of affecting growth, what I think of is consistency and applying the rules fairly across the board. And the last thing that I would say is I've had many citizens anecdotally that have come up to me and said, what about that, you know, those big empty greenhouses up there? And, you know, does this mean we're going to, you know, lose a bunch of tax money? And I think of who's going to pay the difference if we, depending on what we decide to give up. So whatever we decide, the rest of the taxpayers in our community are going to have to pick up the slack on this one. And I don't think that's fair. It would be fair if this was a complete separate venture by a completely separate company, in my view, but it's not, and I support the motion as it is and support staff's recommendations. Mayor Clark.
Through the chair, I was just wondering if we could get an answer to Councillor Knodl's question from before the motion?
Did you want to reframe the question or put it back out?
Sure. So through the chair,
I can.
City Assessor Sturkenberg, I was just going to say, did it land with you what I was looking for about the April to December at 1/3 capacity and what the numbers would, what math would math?
Sorry, through the chair. So would it be a combination, you're saying April, I'm not sure if you're meaning option 2. It's taxable from January to March?
At 1/3 capacity rather than full farm.
So on option 2, we've got taxable from January to March.
Correct.
And then 1/3 for the balance, sorry.
Okay, so through the chair. So we have option 2, April to December, but is it not calculated based on full allocation of the space, or is it only considering 1/3 usage of the space when we calculated that April to December?
Yes, you're correct. It is calculating it based on the full space.
Thank you. Through the chair, is it possible to hybridize those numbers so that we April to December with 1/3 usage, as is exactly the situation, rather than just considering it as, because what I'm feeling is that between the two of those, neither are exactly what's happening. What is happening is, unfortunately, we've missed a deadline, but the circumstance is that we have April to December with seedlings in the space at 1/3 capacity.
Through the chair, I would have to do some calculations because we've got two considerations. We've got market value and the farming value, so it's just going to take some extra work to make that calculation.
So I guess the question's not probably answered to your liking, but let's go to Councillor Hirsch, and I'm sure we'll have some more conversation about that.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wanted to kind of put my position on the table as well. It's always a little bit of a slippery slope when we look at matters like this. I actually go back how many different years ago when we had land classification changes, evaluations were done, people within the community were just frustrated. But realistically, I think we need to kind of remind ourselves that there's appropriate bodies that were created actually to keep council arm's length from decisions like this, including an appeal process that was referred to in the decision item. The fact is that as of December 31st, the tax assessment's pretty clear. It was not a demonstrated use in a farming capacity, which is, as you know in the briefing note, farming capacity is a tax exemption or exempted from tax. So I do appreciate the letter. When we do have assessment, and Sue Sturkenberg comes to us and talks about assessment and value, that really at the end of the day I get asked all the time in terms of how you arrive on that, and it's a quantitative and qualitative approach that is meant to be, I guess in some ways, not debated, because here we are debating it. And my worry is that when we start here, where does it end? So with that, I am going to stand in the fact that I will support the motion as presented. But I do want and note that in the letter we received that upon full operational utilization, Bevo Farms anticipates 30 to 50 employees, which is pretty tangible. So I'm wondering if there's a takeaway that we could do from our economic development staff to reach out to Bevo Farms to talk about different incentive programs that we offer, or any other potential offerings within the community, within the province, et cetera, knowing that we value agriculture as well. So I don't want to mix the two. I think certainly the value that the company brings to our community, I want to celebrate that and appreciate it. But it's as a individual that has taken an oath to, in some ways follow policy, that's what I'm prepared to do in terms of the assessment. So thank you.
Councillor Knotel.
Thank you, and through the chair, just for residents who are concerned about this circumstance, and does this, if majority rules in support of Councillor Dumowski's motion, does that mean that this organization is stuck with their circumstances? I'm just more of a rhetorical question / statement, that inevitably at the next assessment date, they will be reevaluated and their tax rate will again reset to reflect the circumstances. I'm just looking for a yes, that is what's going to happen from Managing Director Egert, if you're willing.
Great question, Councillor Knotel, through the chair. Once the farming activity is established, the assessment will be based on that activity. Of course, they're going to be looking at the usage of the space. There are certain amounts that need to be taxed at full rates based on a 3-acre farming. There's also space there that isn't necessarily used for agriculture, office space and and so forth. So, but yes, that is the case. So if there's agricultural activity, that will be then an input into the next year's assessment.
Mayor Clark.
Thank you. This is the question that I wanted to follow up with when we heard the answer to Councillor Knodels. If I was a owner of a plot of land in the city of Medicine Hat that's residential, and on December 31st of year one, it was vacant, and then in April of the next year, a house had been built on it, would the vacant lot tax amount be the amount charged for the entire year, or would there be a reconciliation at some point during the year?
So in this case, you're talking about a residence under construction during the year?
Yes.
Okay, so again, the vacant land would be assessed based on the condition on December 31st. Then the following year, we would do the same thing. We would test the condition at the following year, at the end of the year. But once a residence has been completed or occupied, we would then issue a supplementary tax. So in that case, because it was completed or occupied, and I don't want to confuse the issue or make it more complicated, but that's how we would look at that.
So in this case, it won't be reconciled in a supplementary tax notification.
Through the chair, correct, because there is no, as I understand it, no construction of a building unless there were enhancements made during the year.
Doesn't it say that there were, though?
Just repeat that, please.
My understanding from the briefing note is that they did retrofit, Bevo did retrofit a third of the building. So that would be enhancements, I would think.
If I could, Sue, if you could come down, please. So, the assessment language is actually very specific, and so I would appreciate getting city assessor's viewpoint. Thanks.
If I can just confirm, then there was some demolition of items that were removed that were needed, necessary for the cannabis growing, and those were no longer needed for the seedlings. And then there was some irrigation that they were retrofitting for their purposes. So the value was still there. When we, in terms of the value, was based on market value. And as far as supplementary goes, if there is new construction that's complete or occupied during this year, in this case, because Bevo Farms is looking at a farmland exemption, then farm buildings would be exempt. In this case, we wouldn't be doing the supplementary, would be a value that we would put on there, but it would still be exempt. I hope that helps to answer the question.
If I may, so they have retrofitted some of it. The seedlings are in that part. So that exists right now. We're coming up to another assessment period in December where we could do a supplementary tax assessment at that time. I'm just wondering, in this case, why wouldn't that happen? Because the use has changed. They've done retrofitting. I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, so there's two different things coming. We're putting an assessment on, but we're also looking at the exemption. So if we're looking at this property, they've done improvements, but if they qualify for the farmland, the farming operation, that farm building will be exempt. So that assessment could increase, but it'll be exempt.
so the assessment is the total value of the property.
Correct.
Then we look at what the rate is for the various pieces of the property. Some of that property has changed its category during the course of this year. Why wouldn't that be considered in the supplementary taxes? I guess when we give a tax notice, because is it just the assessment that would be a supplementary assessment? Or would you be applying in the supplementary assessment what percentage of the land falls into which categories? And the exemption therefore would reduce the amount that they have to pay once the supplementary assessment has been done.
The premise with the supplementary is to look at new construction and to look at the taxable as well. So sending a notice for the taxable assessment where there's been an increase in that assessed amount, and then it's prorated based on the number of months. So if it is exempt, then there's no value to sending the supplementary assessment.
So I guess in general, my question is, when this site gets reassessed at the end of the year, will there be a proration in the taxes at that time to account for the fact that it was an agriculture operation for part of the year?
We haven't done that in the past for farmland exemptions. We have done that for nonprofit organizations that do use space.
Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, I just want to clarify, just to spend some time at MPC, and we ran into this lots. And I guess maybe just to help maybe the understanding of people that is trying to get their heads wrapped around it, the supplemental consideration is only applied when there's, it contemplates construction deriving the market value. So think I got a pile of 2x4s and some concrete, I'm gonna make that all together, and at the end of the construction period, I'm gonna add value. So the argument in this case would be, there was some enhancements, some change of use. The only challenge is the argument that the assessment's based on is the market value. So because it's constructed and it had a value, and call it, and I just put an analogy in here, call it leasehold improvements to the new tenant, that being Bevo Farms. So think of a commercial building that changed from in fact, I'll use my example. So I had a PETA organization or a company that when I sold the business, it actually converted to sushi. So for example, it would be change of use, but the value of the building, and they did enhancements and they changed things, but the value of the building really didn't change. Therefore, the assessment value doesn't change. So in this case, I do understand the position of the applicant to say, listen, I planned on being a farming operation, and they will do so, as indicated, once they go into the next taxation year, then they can use the use in terms of the tax exemption. But I think the argument is the assessment and utilization. And in my mind, the assessment's already made, and then the supplementary piece is exempt for this conversation because the construction's complete. It's just a change of use in my mind. So hopefully that helps. Thanks.
Councillor Cano.
Just one last question. So to understand the circumstance, gathering what I've heard from Mayor Clark and from Councillor Hirsch, the reassessment that would occur on a new build, is that reassessment typically utilized in one direction? So only if it's constructing and increasing value on a property, that is when we would go and reassess. But if it's the opposite direction, we're not gonna take a step back and go, okay, we owe you money, because that would be a very difficult process to engage in all the way across the board. Okay, I'm seeing a head nod, and that's all I need, okay?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I'm learning a lot, thank you.
So seeing no other speakers, we will vote on the motion. Do we want to see the motion again, or is everybody clear on it? It'd been a while, so let's vote. So it is carried, 5-3. Thank you. Moving on to 11.4. It's a bylaw 4821 to amend the dishonored payment bylaw, and the sponsor is Corporate Service. The topic, please.
I can, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bylaw that amends the dishonored payments bylaw, sponsors Corporate Services. They've done a jurisdictional scan to see how our dishonored payment rates compare, and are recommending, albeit minor changes in the bylaw, and also recommending all three readings. Managing Director Eagert, anything else?
Thank you, and through the chair, maybe a little bit of context for all three of these next items. We have done over the last few years, and we continue to do this year, a jurisdictional scan of all of the mid-size municipalities in Alberta. And our attempt is to ensure that we are aligned and that we are not out of step and in excess of what other mid-size municipalities are doing. So what you see here specifically for the dishonored payment bylaw, the recommendation is to increase that in January 1st, 2025, and then again in January 1st, 2026, to $43 and then to $44.
Thank you. I think we just asked for a motion on this one.
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4821 to amend the dishonored payment bylaw.
Second.
Whoops. So do we want to go to second reading, or is this a time for questions?
Vote. We need a vote.
Okay, let's vote on first reading. Thank you. That's unanimous.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4821.
I'll second.
Debate now. Okay, any discussion? So seeing none, we'll vote. That's unanimous.
I move that council unanimously consents to have third reading of bylaw 4821 at this meeting.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous. We'll move on to 11.5. Oh, did we have it? Oh, sorry, my apologies. We need another reading.
I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw am I in the wrong one? Hold on a second. 4821 to amend the dishonored payment bylaw. Apologies.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous. So now we will move on to 11.5, which is bylaw 4822 to amend tax penalties bylaw. The sponsor is Corporate Services, Acting City Manager.
Thank you. Through the chair, same situation as outlined by Managing Director Eagert. Yeah, thank you.
So I don't see any questions, so I have one. So in this particular case, what is the, if you could just explain, what is is it an increase, is it a decrease in the tax penalties?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. This is an increase from currently 14%. We're recommending an increase for 2025 to 14.5%. and for 2026 to 15%. Again, we did a jurisdictional scan of the 7 mid-sized municipalities. And also, I would note for those that are listening is that the city has also approved a tax installment payment plan, which is at this time of year, for those that aren't on there yet, should be considered. And they would have until June 28th to sign up for that particular plan.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Through the chair, I'll move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4822 to amend the tax penalties bylaw.
Second.
And we'll vote. That's unanimous.
I'll move that council gives second reading to bylaw 4822.
Second.
And seeing no speakers, we'll vote.
Mr. Chairman, I move that council unanimously consents to having third reading of bylaw 4822 at this meeting.
I will second that motion.
And we'll vote. That's unanimous.
I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4822 to amend the tax penalties bylaw.
Second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous. We'll move on to 11.6, bylaw 4823 to amend the tax certificate and information fees bylaw. The sponsor is Corporate Services. Acting City Manager.
Thank you. Same context as the previous two. A jurisdictional scan was done with a slight increase recommended.
Thanks. Can we explain the slight increase for our community, please?
Okay. Through the chair, we have a collection of fees that we administer through Corporate Services. The tax certificate, both manual and e-service, they are designed in order to incent and request that the community looks at the e-service component of it, which is a 24-hour service. The tax certificates are typically used by lawyers or realtors, out-of-town realtors, with respect to real estate closings. That would be a legal certified document of tax balances. Tax searches, again, legal description, and those would be typically used to match and confirm the legal address with the civic address. We also have registration of tax arrears, notification, mortgage administration, account fees. These are all intended to not only be reflective of what the other 7 mid-sized municipalities are doing, but are also intended to recoup a portion of the time and effort spent by city staff in doing this work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have a motion?
Yes. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4823 to amend the tax certification and information fees bylaw.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous.
All righty. I move that council give second reading to bylaw 4823.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous.
I move that council unanimously consents to have third reading of bylaw 4823 at this meeting.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous.
I move that council gives third and final reading to bylaw 4823 to amend the tax certificate and information fees bylaw.
I'll second.
And we'll vote. And that's unanimous. We'll move on to 11.7, which is the Airport Master Plan, Major Operating Expenditure Budget Amendment. The sponsor is Development and Infrastructure, Acting City Manager. If you'd introduce it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good news story. Development and Infrastructure has an opportunity to expand their airport master plan work. They originally had a $250,000 MOE approved to do this, but they have applied for 2 grants totaling $275,000. So what they've done is increased the scope of the project, but at the same time, they've reduced the city's operating contribution by $75,000. And I'll ask Managing Director Bohan if he's got any supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have Airport Manager Boyd here to answer any questions you might have regarding the increased scope or the project.
Any questions of Mr. Boyd before we entertain a motion? Mayor Clark, do you have?
Sorry. So just to be clear, this is basically just for accounting purposes. We're increasing the scope of the project to 575,000. Nope, sorry.
Through the chair, it's to increase of 200,000 to 450,000 dollars.
I apologize. Increasing the total amount that we're gonna spend, but only part of that money is ours. And so this increase isn't really an increased output from our normal sources of revenue.
If you're asking about the cost share between what's going to be province and what's going to be city, that's correct. It's actually going to be lowering by $75,000. So
Okay.
the new split will be $175,000 city and $275,000 grant government of Alberta.
Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch?
I was just going to remove my name. I think it was just important for people watching or people in the gallery to understand, because as it's listed, it says council approve a 200,000 increase on the 2024 major operating expenditure. So it's important we just get some clarification as to why that's not exactly the case. It's actually a reduction. So it was asked and answered. So thank you.
Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm just interested in the expanded scope. What will you be able to do with the study that you couldn't do before this good news?
Yeah, so we're actually going to have the opportunity to do a comprehensive infrastructure audit and assessment. So that's going to inform us on the state of our infrastructure, inform us on the capacity, life cycle, and condition of our infrastructure. And that's going to be really foundational down the road when we are looking at preferred developments arising from the master plan work in the later phases of the project. That's going to really inform us on what's actually feasible to do, how much it's going to cost, what's actually possible, right? We're a complex system out of the airport. We've got electrical, we've got pavements, we've got buildings, we've got public roadways. So understanding our infrastructure is really foundational to this whole process.
Seeing no other questions of this presentation, we'll ask for a motion.
I move that council approve a $200,000 increase of the 2024 major operating expenditure airport master plan budget.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any deliberation, any questions, speakers? Seeing none, we'll vote. And that's unanimous. We'll move to 11.9, which is bylaw 4820, to amend land use bylaw. Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss one? Oh, look at me go. So 11.8, let's do that one first. So it's 2024-2025 Family and Community Support Services, additional grant distribution. The sponsor is Public Services, and I'll ask our acting city manager to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The province of Alberta provided a 4.5% increase to partial increase for 2023 and a full 4.5% increase for 2024 and 2025. We used the 2023 increase to fund our community well-being plan, and the 24-25 allocations of $72,000 in each year, totaling $144,000, were evaluated by the Community Vibrancy Advisory Board through their council-approved rubric. And that's the recommendation, as you see in the attachment, the groups that CVAB is recommending funding for.
Thank you. Any questions before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, a motion, please.
Okay, I'll make the motion as it comes out of Public Services. I move that the council approves distribution of 2024-2025 Family and Community Support Services additional grants per the Community Advisory Board recommendations as presented.
I'll second.
And we have a couple speakers. Councillor Dubanowski.
Just briefly, through the chair, just want to acknowledge Councillor Robbins is chair of the committee, and there are obviously other members, including myself on it. We take turns attending the Community Vibrancy Advisory Board. I happen to be at the meeting where these were deliberate. I just want to attest to the, it was a long, very detailed conversation around the those who had applied for additional grant distribution, and just robust conversation that led to what you see before you, and I just wanted to validate that.
Councillor Robbins.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I just wanted to say that the conversation at the committee was also very interesting about how the different local agencies found out and there was information sessions available for them to apply because it was additional funding outside of the regular stream. So we had some discussion of understanding better how they knew that they could apply. So that was very helpful. And I would also note that all three of the recipients, potential recipients, if you vote this way, of this funding involve some service, either coaching or dealing with children who have been impacted by family violence. So all three of the grants that are on the list today of the $144,000 will go directly to youth in our community who need support. And I thought not all of them reflect the support to youth and adolescents in the way that these grant distributions do. So I just want to point that out and thank again the Community Vibrancy Board for all of their work in going through all of the applications in great detail.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. We have a couple now for first readings. And the first one is a recommendation that council consider first reading of bylaw 4820 to amend land use bylaw. Do I have a motion?
I move that council give first reading to bylaw 4820 to amend the land use bylaw.
I'll second that.
And we'll vote. Looks like Mayor Clark, do we have? Oh. Okay, do we just go ahead or wait for her? What's that? Okay, so we'll note that Mayor Clark is absent for the vote, otherwise unanimous. We'll move to the 11.10, which is bylaw 4824 to amend land use bylaw.
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 4824 to amend the land use bylaw.
I'll second.
And we will vote. And we'll note that Mayor Clark was absent for the vote, otherwise unanimous. So we'll move on to number 12, which is notice of motion. I think Councillor Van Dyke has one.
Yes, thank you through the chair.
If I could, point of order, I guess. Through the chair, due to the notice before you and the uncertainty that my acceptance of the nomination as indicated may have a nominal pecuniary interest, I will recuse myself.
Thank you, Councillor Dumanowski. Go ahead, Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you. Now you're not going to hear my nice comments about you, Councillor Dumanowski. Councillor Dumanowski has been a member, oh, sorry, I'll wait for him to go out. Councillor Dumanowski has been a member of the City of Medicine Hat Council since 2001, serving on all the standing committees at one time or another over the years. He has been a steadfast presence at the Horseshoe who approaches issues with an open mind and a desire to continue to make a positive impact. Councillor Dumanowski is the only person on this council that I knew prior to the last election, as he was my children's principal for many years, and we sat around the school council table together before sitting at this Horseshoe. Both experiences have shown me that he is a man of integrity and principle who cares deeply for the people in our community. The Alberta Municipalities Awards recognize leaders in municipalities across Alberta, and Councillor Dumanowski would be a deserving candidate for the Alberta Municipalities Distinguished Services Award, which recognizes an elected official who has served 20 or more years. The deadline for nominations is June 14th, 2024, and I would therefore ask that Council vote to waive notice and consider the following at tonight's meeting. Whereas the Alberta Municipalities Distinguished Service Award recognizes an elected official who has served 20 or more years in one or more Alberta municipalities, and whereas Councillor Robert Dumanowski has served on the Medicine Hat City Council since 2001, proving his unwavering dedication to municipal government and our community, and whereas Councillor Dumanowski's contributions have played a crucial role in the well-being and growth of the community, and his extensive experience and commitment makes him a deserving candidate for recognition, therefore be it resolved that Councillor Robert Dumanowski be nominated for the Alberta Municipalities Distinguished Service Award.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And is there any other speakers?
Can we set that motion aside for a second and have the vote to consider the motion at this meeting? We need a 2/3 majority.
Okay, we need a 2/3 majority to accept this motion at this time, so we need to vote on that first, I guess. So we're voting to see if we can get 2/3 majority. So other than Councillor Dumanowski, who recused himself, and Mayor Clark, it's unanimous. So now we'll move, I think, to the vote on the award itself. Unless there's any speakers, which I don't see any on the list. How much more can we say? So we will vote. And that's unanimous with the exception of Mayor Clark, who is absent, and Councillor Dumanowski, who's recused himself. It's always nice to end on a happy note. I see no other agenda items, so Councillor Knodel.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about how much I appreciate both the media that are up to the left of us as well as security for not, for supporting the work that we're doing here. So we have made some changes to the physical space, and you have adapted and just fallen into a predictable pattern that allows us to focus on those who are speaking. Security is doing their best to keep things in order, and I just want to say that you are appreciated and respect goes a long way, so it's noticed, and thank you.
Thank you. Now it's, I agree with those sentiments. So seeing no, any other, sorry, I didn't ask, is there any other council member reports? So meeting is now adjourned.